Okay, today is August 17, 2013. Let's take a look at the market. The market got a little spooked last week, definitely by Cisco, the earning report from Cisco. Wasn't the miss or anything like that. I think that Cisco actually made their meet their expectation. It's the surprising layoff and the forward forecast that the future quarter might be unsettled. And the 5% layoff, I think it really surprises a lot of people, including myself there. And after that news came out, certainly we kind of expected the market was gonna, get beaten down a bit because of Cisco is part of the Dow, and also IBM has been kind of weak as well. So those two definitely would be, put a lot of weight on the Dow Industrial. Then you throw in an Intel with the slow PC sale, then you got a making of a sell-off. And that's exactly what we saw last week on, I believe on Thursday and Friday. We essentially Friday was kind of ho-hum, but on Thursday definitely, the Thursday we actually down the Dow down over 200 point. So let's take a look at the S&P 500 right now, and let me go on and switch it to the weekly. On the weekly chart here, we're still seeing that the trend is still intact, although we get a little bit of a correction here. We don't know is this just a little pullback or is a beginning of something new here. So we just have to wait and see. But definitely the trend is still up and it's still riding on this this price channel here. So we switch back to look at the daily price chart. We're looking at the possibility of holding at this 1650, and it actually came down and tested that. So right now, we're essentially we're going to keep an eye on the S&P 500 to see is it going to break this 1850 level here. If it does, when we probably will take a look at the possibility of this thing holding at this particular low here, which is somewhere around the 1608, 1609. Let me put up the so let's see exactly what was the close on that particular day. It was 1608.90. So essentially looking for it to see could it hold at 1609. If it failed to hold this 1651, 1652, because the close of this day is 1651.81. So on all practical purposes, we could call this 1652. So if it hold at 1562, then we might get a little bounce back and come back up and try to reclaim this level here of the 1675. And if it doesn't, then we have to expect that it could come back down to the 1615, 10 area. Okay. So and then if we take a look at the Dow Jones 30, and again let's take a look at the weekly. The weekly trend is still holding up. It's still within that price channel here. Again, similarly to the S&P 500. I don't think we should get panicky yet. At least right now, it could be just a pullback and set it up for the next up move. But we just have to keep an eye on the price action and see what's going on in the week to come. Because after everybody get back from the vacation, then in the month of September, we could see some volatility come back in. So right now, we're essentially looking for this thing to hold at this 15,022. If it doesn't hold, again, we got a little pivot low here, which is somewhere around the 14,960. So we expect it to see is it going to come down and test that level. If it's not, can hold that, then we're probably looking at this particular pivot low here, which will be somewhere around the 14,659. So again, it's kind of a little tricky right now. Essentially, we need to see some some holding on certain support level here. Basically this level here, the 1522, and if we can hold at 15,022, then we have to sort of take a look at the possibility of coming down to this, under the 15,000, get down to the 14,940. Then you probably start hearing all these talking head on these financial news network talking about breaking the 15,000. So anyway, let them talk and we will trade. So go back and look at the Nasdaq 100. Nasdaq 100, similarly on all these indexes on a weekly basis, the trend is still pretty much intact. Right? It's just that on the daily basis, then we have to be a little bit more concerning and have to keep an eye on those. Right now, you're looking at the the Nasdaq 100. But we probably get a possibility. There's a possibility that we're going to come down and see it test this level somewhere around this 3,029, 3,030, and possibly get down here and try to fill this gap here, right near the 3,000 mark. So we gotta keep an eye on that. Right now, there's a little gap here. So if it's gonna bounce, then at least it's gonna bounce back up to this gap. And also, if we take a look at some of this Fibonacci retracement, you can see that it's kind of hovering at this 78.6, and if come down and test this gap here, that's essentially come down to the 61.8 retracement. So those are a few levels that you might want to keep an eye on, and also the 50% retracement just right beneath the 3,000 mark here. Okay. And if we look at the Russell 2000, the Russell 2000 also similarly, still holding the weekly trend on this long-term uptrend here. So right now again, it's also be pulling back just like all the other indexes. Right, coming down to fill this gap here right now. So we essentially got to keep an eye on that to see how far it's gonna come down. We see that it's coming down here. Okay, possibility of getting down to this 1020. If we break this 1020 again, we're basically looking for this thing to come back down and test this 1,000. So there's a possibility you're going to come down to this 1,000 and test for support. Then again, if we put up the Fibonacci retracement, you can see some of those levels is basically on those support area. Right? So you see the 618 is essentially filling up this gap here. This is 618, and then between the getting close to that 38.2 is that 1,000 mark. So we got to keep an eye on that on the Russell 2000. Okay, so let's go and take a look at CSCO to see what kind of damage that it has done. And you see CSCO on the earning gap, it come down, and then on Friday it's still going down. So right now it's kind of sitting right here at this 24 area. Most likely going to come down and test this 24, right? This 24 area here. If it can't hold this 24, then it probably will come down and try to test this gap area here, right near the the 2330. Wouldn't be surprised to see it actually come down and fill this gap down here at this 21, 26. We might get a little bounce. If we get a little bounce, we probably see the resistance here at 2530. So, and if we put up the Fibonacci retracement, we could also see, if we get it down here, we see that the 50% retracement is near this gap level here, this gap. Okay, and right now it's sitting close to the 618. So we should see it to possibly come down and tag this 50% retracement, then see would it get a bounce back up. If it doesn't, then we could easily see this thing probably will drop down and fill this gap here at the 2126. And the other one is IBM. IBM, we've been talking about the 187, right here, this 187 level for it to hold. And if it doesn't hold, then it's going to come down to this 185. And if the 185 doesn't hold, we expect it to drop down to this 176, 175 area. Right, so that's basically right now it's kind of trying to hold this 185. And if it can't hold this next week, if it break down, most likely we'll see that 175, and that's going to put more pressure on the Dow 30. So we probably expect the market to continue to pull back a little bit more and spook some more of the people out before we might get a little reversal and go back to the to the upside. And then we also look at Intel, because these are the Cisco, the IBM, and the Intel. They pretty much are a bellwether for the tech sector. So if the tech sector, by these three guys, if tech sector go, then you could kind of be careful at the Nasdaq 100. Okay, so let's get this. Okay, so you see Intel, we're talking about holding this 22 support here. Right now it's basically testing this 22 support, this 2188, 2190. And if we break that, we are looking at it to come down to this 20 area here. So if I pull this back here, so essentially we're looking at somewhere around coming down to test this, these pivot down here. So you kind of have to keep an eye on Intel. If Intel continue to come down and break this, this support here, this 2190, definitely we could see some more downside and possibly won't find much of a support until we get down to near this $20 area. Okay. Then the strength of the market, especially the tech sector, is Apple, and Apple was holding up pretty well on the throughout the week. And if we take a look at the weekly on the Apple, you see this nice classic double bottom here, this pattern, and it broke this W, this double bottom pattern on the weekly. You could see that's this 465. And right now we have a projected major move that is going to go up to that 537, and based on the 50% Fibonacci retracement, we're also looking at the 546. So it could be anywhere between that 535 to 550, because there's also another Fibonacci retracement that we put up, that we projected from the previous video, that was giving us somewhere around that 550 level. So definitely Apple is kind of showing some strength, and that might be a little bit of a savior for the Q on the Nasdaq 100, and that probably will hold that up and probably give a little perception that the Nasdaq is not as bad as it seems. Same thing with the S&P 500, because Apple is part of the S&P 500. And if we take a look at the daily on Apple here, you see Apple is kind of clustered here, building a little bit of a support, and it could be setting up another flag, and it pushes up to that 505. We needed to break that 505 essentially to fill this gap. Then we can see it come up here to this 518, 519, and continue to move up and probably tag this 537. This is basically the major move from the double bottom, projected major move of the this double bottom between here and the pivot. Okay. Then the other guy is the Google. Google, it seems like Apple and Google is kind of playing musical chair. If Google goes up, Apple go down, and vice versa. You can see that Google is breaking down. We're talking about holding this 860, and if we break that 860, then we probably most likely going to look for it to come down to test the 820 and possibly the 800 level. Right now, it's still just got underneath this trend line here, and we might get a little bit of a bounce and try to reclaim that trend line next week, but it looks like right now Google is pretty weak, and most likely they're going to come down and attack this 820 and possibly the 800. Especially right now, it could be, if I were to looking for a long possibility, I would at least wait until Google come back and fill this gap, and then kind of consolidate up at this trend line before I actually go and take a look at some of this setup for long. But right now, Google certainly look more bearish than on the bullish side here. So definitely want to keep an eye on Google. If Google come down, and if Apple doesn't go up and take up the slack, then we could see the Q gonna get pound. So, and then the other one is Facebook. I know a lot of you guys probably been following Facebook. Facebook actually tagged the IPO gap and also went up to 39, and now come back and sort of filling, trying to test this gap once again. And let me put that on a weekly here. So you can see this gap here. This is the IPO gap here. Right? It kind of filled this, and also I was saying that even though we saw some kind of bounce in the midday last Friday, I was tweeting out to say, although the daily looks might look a little good, but the weekly is not looking that good. You can see this doji here, and this price pattern is kind of setting up of a what we call evening star. And when these type of pattern form near the after some extended uptrend, that usually turn out to be a little bit more bearish than actually a bullish type of or neutral type of pattern. Although this candle here, last week's red candle, is not as big as the previous this green candle here. But if next week we get a continuing downside and maybe come down and tag this 78.6 level somewhere around the 35, 36, then certainly that would put some more precaution on the table to step aside and wait for Facebook to re-establish itself, to give us a long. Because right now it could be just coming down, tag this 78 and getting a little bounce. If it come back up and tag this 38.20, if we go about the 38.25, then I probably would consider looking for a possibility of going back long. Essentially, I wanted to break this trend line and come up to this pivot. Right. So depending on the price action, but definitely right now I wouldn't be go chasing Facebook. I think the easy money is already made from this earning gap. So right now you kind of have to wait until it consolidate and then we set up itself and look for some sort of setup and trigger. And right now, the candle with these long wick and this little doji, and then on a weekly, that possibility of the evening star certainly doesn't bode well to go for longs right now.